Alright, I am back. No excuses, it was the holidays. Went to spend some time with family, but now we're back to it. I know some Marvel stuff has happened. Not really too much crazy news on the Marvel side. Anime side, kind of weak too. Right now, we're going to talk about Yu Yu Hakusho and where does it rank. So without further ado, let's cue the intro.
It's a bird!
It's a plane!
It's a geek.
Alright, so how I'm going to do these, I'm going to make this a series, but it's probably going to take a long time for me to get my shows and fully watch it and analyze it and dissect it. But from now on, and leave some shows in the comments, please. Anime shows, leave them in the comments. But I'm going to be grading an anime show. We're going to do storytelling, world building, fight, villains, and character development. So, we're going to start, right? We're going to start with a simple summary. If you haven't watched Yu Yu Hakusho, it's basically about, and if you haven't watched it, I'll recommend you probably watching it or watching a little bit of it first before you watch this video. But it's about this kid, Yusuke Urameshi. He gets hit by a car, he dies. He becomes a spiritual detective and he has to fight demons. You take that summary and you say, well, hold on, there are some shows that kind of are similar to that. The one that comes to mind for me is Bleach. Bleach is very similar to Yu Yu Hakusho. Hunter x Hunter, I think the creator of Yu Yu made Hunter x Hunter, wrote it or some crap like that. So that's kind of there's similarities there. So it's a great story. And it's a story that's told compact, concise, really no filler in the show. I think the show is like 150 episodes, if that. But in that 150 episodes, they do a good job of making you fall in love with the characters, being afraid for the characters, doing that. So that leads me into character development. With everything I say, we're going to have a scale of 1 to 10. So the highest the anime could get is a 50. The lowest they can get is a 0. And starting with character development, the characters, they develop in a great way. Let's start with Yusuke. Yusuke is probably the person. Now, I'm not gonna probably rank it high, but Yusuke is probably the person who does the most development. He becomes someone who's just looking out for himself and starts to become someone who is looking out for his family. He has friends he likes to look out for now. Looking out for some certain demons. So he becomes a person who's very passionate, coming from a person who's a thug, who doesn't really like people like that. Then you have Kuwabara. Kuwabara basically stays the same about the whole show. Same thing for Hiei. Same thing for Kurama. Same thing for Genkai. So character development, I want to give it. I'm probably gonna give character development a 5, and I'm giving it a 5 because I don't want to be too low and I don't want to be too high. Just because the only development we really get is through Yusuke, and I know he's our protagonist, but you can still get character development. But the character development we do get with Yusuke is very, very great. It's great character development. So I'll give it a 5 for that. And on to the storytelling. The story, like I said, is very concise, it's very simple, but that doesn't mean it's bad. You have a lot of demons who have goals where they're just trying to be the strongest, or like a Goku. You know, y'all know how I feel about Dragon Ball Z. But you have villains like Sensui. I'm dipping into the villains part. But you have villains like Sensui, who he's a human, and most of the time humans, they're fighting the demons. But Sensui is like, man, humans are bad too. And that could be character development too, so I might actually give character development a 6. So scratch that. Character development is a 6. So, but you have Sensui who's like, man, I'm fighting demons. Sensui was a spirit detective as well. I'm fighting demons. I'm a human, but I see these humans doing bad things to demons, so who is really the villain here? Are we the bad people or are the demons the bad people? That's good right there. That's a good story in itself. So you have villains like that. But with the story, man, the story is kind of one note at times. It's kind of one note. But what they do is they let you feel for the characters. When you feel for the characters, you do that by telling a great story. Now, feeling for the characters is different than character development. Character development is when a character goes from one person and gradually becomes a different person. Not rushed, but gradually. But throughout the story, man, they make us feel for Genkai. They make us feel for Yusuke. They make us feel for Kuwabara. They make us feel for all the humans. They make us feel for demons too. And they do that, I don't really want to go into too much spoilers, but they do that by just doing great dialogue. This show, it's a fighting show, but it also has a lot of heavy dialogue. You get a lot of backstory. You get backstory with Hiei. That's not even going to spoil it, screw it. You get backstory with Hiei, how he is with his sister, how he has a sister from a village where they're all women. But the all-women village, they go through a different reproduction thing to where they're supposed to just produce girls. But Hiei is a dude. You have her sister, who's a girl, obviously, and she's trying to find Hiei. Hiei doesn't want to be found. She finds Hiei, and it's like, for whatever reason, Hiei doesn't want to be found to protect her because, you know, as you know, and it's definitely a trope, a person who has enemies always goes to the person that's closest to you. So that's Hiei. And then you got Kurama. Kurama was a demon, had to be reborn to a human, and had a relationship with his mom. Not like adult type of relationship, but a deep relationship with his mom. So that made him soft, that made him weak. So he's trying to get himself. You got Kuwabara. His parents aren't there. His big sister's taking care of him, and his big sister is very like demanding, very, very strong. And Kuwabara's kind of lackluster. He has this determination where he wants to be the best at something. He has a friend, Yusuke, and for them, a lot of times it was one-sided. It was a one-sided friendship, and he was like, man, I gotta beat Yusuke, gotta beat Yusuke. And he got that from his big sister, Koenma. Koenma, with him being a baby or being a toddler or whatever, and having to rule over the spirit realm, and having a dad who's always on his butt. Genkai, I think I already mentioned Genkai, but Genkai, being in love with a person who gave his life to be a demon. And then you got where she had to find a new student, where some of her morals were being intact too, because she had to find a new student so her destiny still be in the world. But she had to do that even though she could probably, the person she gave her powers to would probably be a bad person. So it's a lot, man. And they do a good job with packing it in these episodes. They do a good job. And I want to say every episode, most anime episodes around 23-24 minutes. This show, even though it's 150, somewhere around there, close to 130, 115, even though it's that short, they pack a lot into an episode. And by that, I mean, they don't have a long intro, they don't have a long outro. So whereas you look at One Piece, where it gets a lot of trash for its pacing, One Piece, you'll get like basically 15 minutes of prime show. But here, you get 20 minutes of prime show and 2 minutes of outro and intro. So they do a good job with that. So when it comes to storytelling, man, storytelling, I gotta give it an 8. Right now, character development is 6, storytelling is 8. Now to the world building. Now the world building, it's not really nothing crazy. It's just, you got the spirit realm, you got the demon realm, and that's it. Not really much to be said about that, about the world building. The demon kingdom, it is vast, but unfortunately we didn't get to see much of it because of the mangaka. He really quit Yu Hakusho when they still had a lot of story to tell. So from what I can infer, the demon realm is huge, just like the spiritual realm is, just like the human world is. We don't get much of the demon realm. We get the 3 kings like at the end. The spirit realm, we don't really get much of that. Human realm, we don't really get much of that. So for world building, I'll give it a 3. I'll give world building a 3. And this is my opinion, by the way. My opinion. You don't have to mess with it, but this is my opinion. Moving on to the fight. This is going to be controversial because with fight, if you watch any one of my One Piece videos, fights are different now because fights that happened in the 90s and 80s are going to look different than fights that happen in now with JJK and the new animation and all that type of stuff. With that being said, I still have to give fights. And you have power. When you have the powers, Yusuke with his spirit gun, Toguro with his strengthening stuff. Everybody had a different like kind of ability or whatever with their spirit energy. I think the power scaling was good, but the fights probably could have been a little better. Because to be honest with you, the only great fight we have is the one where Yusuke versus Toguro. Kurama has a couple fights. Really, all the fights come from at the end with when Team Urameshi beats the Toguro team. So with that being said, man, I'll have to give the fights probably a 6. I'll give the fights a 6. I feel like they're above average for their time, but they could have been a little better. And really, the story really kind of drives up how the fights are in general. So, and now the villains. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to give the villains a 4. And I'm only giving the villains a 4 because most of the villains are kind of just in the tournament. So they're villains just by being villains by default, you know what I mean? But when you come to the main villains, when you talk about Sensui and you talk about Toguro is a person where we know his backstory a little bit, but his thing is he just didn't want to be old and become weak. So it's like he really had no reason to really want to be fighting Yusuke like that. But at the same time, he did have a reason to fight Yusuke because Yusuke had took the power from Genkai, and Genkai and Toguro was a thing. When it comes to Toguro, now storytelling does carry Toguro, like I'm saying. When it comes to Toguro as a villain himself, I'm probably going, I don't know where I put him at. But the reason, if it was Toguro himself, I'll probably have it like a 2 or 3. The reason I gave it what I gave it is just because Sensui is a villain where his art is probably honestly better than Togoro's art. Sensui is trying to basically free the demon realm, so they can be one in one and be able to move and transport through the human realm and the demon realm. I think the spirit realm too. I can't remember. You have that. Then he had multiple personalities because of the trauma he had for himself. Then you have the thing where he was also a spirit detective. Sensui kind of carries in that department, and he had lackeys too. He had people who was working under him, kind of like Toguro, but they were working under him because they wanted to see him achieve his goal, and they had a reason to be with him. So for that's gonna be that. This is the final total on the screen. I can't remember what I gave everything. I'm gonna be honest with you. I recommend watching Yu Yu Hakusho. I do. No matter what the score says, it's a good show just because of the story. If you want a good story, if you want a short story, somewhat decent fights, great characters. Yusuke develops great, but the characters themselves are great. Villains, Togoro's one note, but when you get the Sensui, you get a little more story that carries too. World building is there, but it's not. It's not middle of the pack for sure. Even though the score might say, I don't know what the score is now. It's not middle of the pack, but it is definitely worth a watch if you call yourself an anime watcher. So with that being that, that's all I got for y'all. This is a weird video, but I'm out. Great.